It started quietly, almost too quietly. For years, Toronto's housing market had been a national obsession, the ultimate symbol of wealth and stability. Homes doubled in value, bidding wars became weekend entertainment, and people genuinely believed prices could never fall. But in 2025, that illusion shattered. Within months, prices crashed 5%, wiping billions in paper wealth and leaving thousands of homeowners stunned. The Greater Toronto Area's benchmark price plunged to $960,000, numbers once unthinkable in Canada's biggest city. Prime Minister Mark Carney, a man who once warned about housing bubbles, suddenly found himself leading a country watching one burst in real time. To understand what happened, you have to go back to 2021 and 2022. Those were the fever years when open houses looked like concerts and people bid hundreds of thousands over asking just to get a foot in the door. Mortgage rates were near zero, money was cheap, and fear of missing out drove prices to record highs. Agents bragged about selling homes in 24 hours. Developers launched towers faster than they could pour foundations. And for a while, it worked. Everyone felt like a genius. Until it didn't. By mid-2025, those same open houses stood empty. Once confident sellers waited weeks without a single offer. What used to be the safest bet in Canada suddenly looked like a trap. September's data told a story few wanted to believe. The GTA's benchmark price down 5.5% year over year. Detached homes averaging $1.36 million, down more than 4%. Condos, the city's golden child, down 4%, sitting at $655,000. On paper, those numbers might look small, but in a city built on debt, speculation, and sky-high valuations, a 5% drop is seismic. Billions vanished from balance sheets. Thousands of families saw their home equity evaporate overnight. The market that once defined Toronto's identity was suddenly rewriting it. For years, homeowners believed prices only moved in one direction, up. So when the offers started coming in tens of thousands below asking, disbelief set in. Open houses that once drew crowds now attracted silence. Offer night became a joke. Some listings sat for months without a single showing. People who bought in 2021 at the peak faced a cruel reality. Their homes were now worth less than their mortgages. Many simply refused to sell, clinging to the hope the storm would pass. Others didn't have a choice. Renewal deadlines were approaching, and payments were rising fast. The era of easy money had ended. For the first time in a decade, the power shifted. Buyers, once desperate, now held all the cards. They made lowball bids, demanded inspections, financing conditions, even repairs, things unthinkable just a year earlier. Real estate agents described it as whiplash. Deals dragged on for weeks as buyers walked away mid-negotiation. And the message was clear. The frenzy was over. The market was no longer a gold rush, it was a minefield. The shockwaves spread fast. Across Canada, sales dipped 1.7% in September alone. The national price index fell 3.4%. But it was Toronto, alongside Vancouver and Hamilton, that dragged the entire country down. The two most expensive markets were now the weakest. The sense of invincibility that once defined urban Canada was gone, replaced by anxiety and silence. Economists began whispering what no one wanted to say out loud. If Toronto could fall, no market was safe. By autumn, listings flooded the system. Active inventory surged 15% year over year. Nearly 40,000 unsold units, new builds, resales, assignments, sat waiting for buyers who never came. On MLS, rows of identical condos scrolled endlessly. Agents slashed prices weekly, hoping to trigger some action, but with so much supply and so little demand, even aggressive discounts couldn't break the freeze. The psychology of the market had changed. What once created panic buying now created hesitation. People no longer feared missing out, they feared getting trapped.
Not long ago, Toronto's bidding wars were legendary. Families camped outside listings, buyers submitted offers sight unseen, sold over asking signs dotted every block. But by late 2025, those signs disappeared. Sellers quietly removed listings or accepted silent defeats. Now, instead of celebrations, there were price reduction stickers and empty driveways. Agents described open houses full of curious onlookers, but no offers. Toronto's market wasn't just cooling, it was freezing solid. The real bloodbath came in the condo sector. By the end of September, 10 projects, 2,500 units were canceled in just 3 months. By year end, that number doubled. Developers who once bragged about sold-out launches were now shuttering sales centers. Cranes stopped moving, sites went dark, and investors were left holding worthless pre-construction contracts. It was the worst collapse in 35 years of record-keeping. An entire pipeline of urban housing wiped out almost overnight. For buyers, the nightmare deepened. Many had placed deposits worth 6 figures, money they couldn't easily replace. Assignment sales they once counted on to exit their deals vanished. Clauses were tightened, penalties soared, and legal battles erupted. Class actions formed, telegram groups popped up overnight, filled with angry buyers demanding answers. But recovery was slow. Developers blamed lenders blamed regulators, and the result was the same. Ordinary Canadians caught in the crossfire of a system built on leverage and trust that had finally collapsed. And when construction stopped, the pain spread. Drywallers, electricians, plumbers, all suddenly without work. Suppliers waited on unpaid invoices. Mid-tier builders filed for bankruptcy protection. Lenders, terrified of contagion, pulled credit lines. Developers who were once expansion machines now faced foreclosure. Entire neighborhoods froze in time, half-built towers surrounded by silence. The crash wasn't just financial, it was physical. You could see it in the skyline. The Bank of Canada tried to calm the storm, cutting its policy rate to 2.5%, the lowest in 3 years. But for homeowners, that meant little. Those renewing 5-year fixed mortgages faced brutal jumps, hundreds more each month. Variable rate borrowers had already been squeezed since 2022. And despite the cut, lenders kept stress tests high. Mortgages still carried rates far above what most families could afford. The numbers didn't add up. Incomes were stagnant, expenses were soaring, and the cost to own in Toronto was still miles beyond reach. For many, the choice became brutal: sell now or sink later. Behind the statistics were stories that broke hearts. A young couple in Scarborough bought their first condo in 2022, thrilled to finally own something. By 2025, that home had lost over $100,000 in value. Every offer came in below their mortgage. Selling meant walking away with nothing and debt that would follow them for years. A landlord downtown saw her payments jump $1,000 a month while rent slipped. She was forced to sell at an $80,000 loss. And across the city, thousands shared their pain in silence, watching years of effort erased in months. While Toronto crumbled, other cities thrived. In Quebec City, prices jumped 13%. Winnipeg climbed 11%. Even Regina and Montreal saw gains. Why? Because those markets still had affordability. People could actually buy homes to live in, not just to flip. Toronto's price-to-income ratio, among the worst in North America, had finally broken under its own weight. The correction wasn't random, it was inevitable. Economists now point to what they call the Toronto trap. For years, the city relied on condo speculation and cheap credit. Developers built for investors, not families. Wages lagged far behind prices, and foreign capital flooded the skyline. It worked, until borrowing costs rose, investors bailed, and reality hit. The crash didn't just expose bad timing, it revealed how fragile the system had become. When the headlines turned grim, Ottawa had to act.
Prime Minister Mark Carney announced Build Canada Homes, a $25 billion rescue program to restart construction and stabilize confidence. The plan promised 12,500 homes at Downsview and billions in incentives for builders. Carney, once hailed as the man who tamed global finance, was now trying to save Canada's housing dream from itself. But not everyone was convinced. Critics called Build Canada Homes a bandage on a bullet wound. They warned that flooding a weak market with new projects could worsen oversupply and inflate another bubble. Others argued the plan ignored affordability altogether, focusing on optics, not outcomes. And beneath it all, public trust was cracking. Canadians had seen rescue plans before. They wanted results, not promises. For the first time in a generation, Canadians were afraid of real estate. The idea that property only goes up was gone. Families stopped talking about investment properties and started talking about survival. Real estate, once a dinner table brag, became a taboo topic. People avoided the question, "How's your house doing?" When optimism fades, markets don't just fall, they stall. And Toronto had entered that emotional freeze. Even if prices stabilize, experts warn recovery could take years. Developers are cautious, lenders are nervous, and buyers no longer trust the process. Psychologically, Toronto's market has changed forever. The myth of endless appreciation is gone. The new question isn't how to get rich, it's how to stay solvent. Toronto's housing crash wasn't caused by one event, it was a perfect storm. High inventory, strained affordability, fragile pre-construction pipelines, and years of unchecked speculation. But more than anything, it exposed a truth Canadians ignored for too long. No market is untouchable. Now, as the crane stands still and families wait for stability, the world watches Canada's biggest city face its reality. Because if Toronto can fall, who's next?